She was just a girl. She expected the world, but it flew away from her reach. So she ran away in her sleep. Need a power, power, paradise, power, power, paradise, power, power, paradise.
Hello, hello, hello. My name is Curtis Walker, and I am part of the Global Scholar of Distinction program, and this is my review of the movie Maria, Full of Grace. And I'm really, really grateful that I got the opportunity to be a part of this program. And so, yeah, here we go. So, all right. So, this is a great movie. It's called Maria Full of Grace, and it has some really, really great actresses and actors in it. And I really, really enjoyed the film. And so, we're just going to get right into it. I'm going to put me and the review up together, and let's just get right into it. Okay. So, the main characters are Maria, played by Catalina Sandino Moreno, Blanca by Yeni Poala Vega, Lucy Diaz is played by Juliet Lopez, Carla is played by Patricia Rey, Don Fernando is played by Orlando Tobon, Customs Inspector, which we'll get to, is Selena Leve, and the other Customs Inspector is Ed Trucco. So I thought this was a really great film. I believe it's 2005. It did win many, many awards. I could not put them all down, so I'll just tell you a few of them. It won the Independent Spirit Awards for Best Female Lead, Satellite Award for Best DVD, Independent Spirit Award for Best First Screenplay by the director, Toronto Film Critics Award for Best First Screenplay as well, Chicago Film Critics Association Award, and the Gotham Independent Film Award for Breakthrough Actress, obviously played by Catalina Sandino Moreno. The vitals, I will tell you. So the film is set in Colombia. The acting I thought was extremely, extremely, extremely well done. Actually, was really good and very accurate to portray the characters and the time and the setting. Just great, great banter, communication, body language. It was really great in my opinion. The artistry I thought was excellent. Very detailed storyline. Really, really smooth transitions from scene to scene. I believe that it was set in Colombia, so that was really, really great. Great villages, and just gave you a great feel for the neighborhoods and Colombian life as it was. The culture, again, is Hispanic and in language, with behavior as well as family. So you'll have to watch this as an English speaker, what we call it subtitles, but you're going to follow really, really well. It's great. I thought it was put together very well. Directing, it is interesting, and I thought the directing was smooth, and the characters had great depth. I thought that you're gonna have a great emotional relationship with the characters and connect very, very well with them. Even though as an English speaker you'll be reading the subtitles, but I think the flow is really great. The genre was that it is a thriller, a drama, and a crime movie. The impact on me was that it made you relate to the choices that we make, and you never know why people do what they do, as well as the consequences for some of the things that we do in our lives. Overview. So Maria is a very young woman. I would say early 20s. No more than 25 tops. She's working in a factory, and she's pruning roses of the pricks, like the little thorns and stuff. She lives with her family, which consists of her mother, her sister, and her sister's child that she helps take care of. The setting is in Colombia. The job is very demanding that she works for in sort of like a manufacturer production type thing. And she's forced to leave after an incident with her boss. Obviously, she needs to find work immediately because the entire family is counting on her for survival. This is when tragedy and irony, began to become part of her life. She meets a young man who offers her work as a drug mule. Taking that risk with drugs in her stomach, she flies to New York, and this is when she realizes that this new job is way more than she bargains for. So let's get straight to the storyline. So Maria in the opening scene, I believe it is in a factory and she's pruning roses, but she's pregnant and she's beginning to have these morning sickness, and she needs to go to the bathroom, and she's also obviously bored of what she's doing. She thinks that it's like a dead end, and she realizes that something's got to give. So her boss comes over and he's like, "Well, why do you need to go to the bathroom? You've been going to the bathroom. You've been already." And she's like, "No, but I really need to go." And that back and forth goes on for a little bit, and then at the same time she throws up, and when she throws up she vomits all over the plants, and so now he makes her pick it up, which obviously to her she's already annoyed, and I understand because she's pregnant and she's got a lot on her mind. She's trying to figure it all out, and he makes her take it to the sink and she has to wash it off and all that stuff, and they have this sort of like interrogatory conversation. End of story, to put things short, is that she ends up losing her job. She loses her job. Her family does not know yet. She goes into the drugstore with her mom, which is like the next scene. And her mom and her sister are there, and they need money for medication. And from Maria's perspective, is why does she always have to give all of her money out to help out? And eventually she does. That's a kind of older sibling rivalry type of thing. And, she feels that there's just so much on her and she can feel the weight of her world. From that scene, she goes to a party and she's dancing with her best friend, who is Blanca. And then Blanca likes a guy, so she gets the guy to dance with Blanca. And then she has her boyfriend, not so boyfriend, the guy that got her pregnant. It's an interesting relationship. And she asks him to dance. She says, "Juan, I want to dance." He leaves his friends. He starts to dance with her. And then she pushes him off, like, "What are you doing? Because you're drunk." And then there's another guy, interestingly, a guy named Franklin. And so Franklin says, "Hey, you want to dance?" And she's like, "Sure, why not?" So they dance. And that is a beginning scene that connects to another scene. And I understand why they put that there. So then she gets into an argument with her sister about the medication and how she always has to give what she makes. And then she tells her flat out, like, "Well, I don't have that job anymore. I quit." And her sister demands that she goes back to this job. And they're just like having this little conversation, and you could feel the power and the emotion of the scene. And it's just like, "Well, I'm not." So she decides that she's going to go to another place and get a job. But that happens after the next scene where she meets Juan at some, like a Tribala, where it's like a vacant building. And she tells him that, "Hey, I'm pregnant." And then Juan, he thinks about it for a minute. He's like, "Well, we got to get married." She goes, "No, no, 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 no. Me and you can't get married." And I guess she realized, because Juan is he's just kind of hanging out in life, the portrayal of me. And like, I don't know what he has going on or what he doesn't have going on. And she's like, "Well, no." But he did. I'll give him credit. Juan was going to step up. And he's like, and she's like, "No, where are we going to stay?" And he's like, "Well, we can stay at my mom." He's like, "Why would we do that? I mean, I don't want to be like my sister. My sister's staying at home with a baby." And she just looks at like, this is like an end of a road type of relationship. And so they get in this argument, and she's like, "I don't love you." But I think when she said that, she's telling him, like testing him. And then he goes, "Well, I don't love you too." And so that pisses her off. And she's like, "Fine." And she's out of there. So she's determined now to go get this job. She's at the bus stop, and then Franklin, the guy that she met at the party that was dancing with her, drives by on a motorcycle, which is big if you live in Colombia. You got your own bike, you got freedom, and so forth. And he's like, "Well, where are you going?" She's like, "I'm going to this other city to get a job." He's like, "Well, I'll take you." So they ride off, and she's talking to him. They get the bite to eat, and she, "What do you want to do with your life, or what are you trying to do?" And then he's like, "Well, I know a guy. I got a job if you want it." And then she's thinking about it. She's like, she doesn't know what he's talking about. He's like, "Well, no, it's not for you anyway." And then she's like, "Well, what's the job?" He says, "Well, I'll show you." So he gets to this place. It's like a pool hall. He goes up and talks to the guy, who eventually, now we know, is the drug guy, the head guy in charge. And then the guy calls Maria up, and they talk for a minute. And at that time, she sees Lucy. She doesn't know who Lucy is yet, but she sees her walking out. And so she accepts that, hey, all the consequences that come with this type of work, she's willing to do it because they need money. And she's like at her ends weak. She at her ends with. She needs to do something. And sometimes in our lives, we make a bad decision out of necessity, and once we've made it, we can't really go back. So we have to learn. We learn to live with our mistakes. So she comes out and she gets on the bus heading back to her hometown, and she sees Lucy. And Maria's an interesting person. She's very I would call her a go-getter, but she's also a thinker, and she seems to have this fearless attitude, and at the same time, she's very independent. So she just approaches Lucy in the back seat, kind of coy, kind of interested, kind of curious, and she like sees her. Hey, I saw you inside the bar. She's like, yeah, and Lucy's kind of looking at her like, who are you? Why should I give you this information? Do I trust you or don't I trust you type of thing. And they both have this feel. And eventually tell you, yeah, it's not so bad. They don't treat you bad. Just do what they tell you to do. It's going to be okay. And so, they strike off this kind of relationship, friendship type deal. Well, so from there, Lucy, I guess they kind of exchange the address, and eventually she goes back. She takes the drugs. She's had a little difficulty swallowing because remember, she's pregnant. She gets on the flight, and guess who's on the flight? Blanca, her best friend. Well, Lucy, Blanca, and Maria are all on the same flight heading to New York. They're all drug mules. They're carrying illegal narcotics into the United States of America. Lucy begins to feel sick on the flight. And for those that don't know, drugs are kind of wrapped in these like balloons. And the possibility that they burst is real. So I believe that they began to dissolve inside of her. And Lucy's starting to feel the effects of that because there's a lot of drugs in you. And all it takes is one, and that can be like a complete overdose. And she's beginning to really, really feel bad. So they get up, they go to the bathroom, and Maria's like, "Don't worry, when we get to New York, we're gonna get a hospital, and we'll figure this out." And so Lucy's sits back in her seat, and they off to New York. The plane lands. Maria gets stopped by customs. Oh my goodness. So the customs begin to question her, like, who do you know here? Why are you in America? Are you sure you're not trafficking drugs? And Lucy's like, no. Maria's like, no, 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 no. I don't know anything about that. He's like, okay, if you don't know anything about that, then we're just gonna, we want to search you. So they search her, they search her bags, and she's still saying, no, I don't know anything about that because, I mean, she's got to play her cards right here, right? Because this is it right here. So they end up having to try to get her to take an x-ray, but then they realize that she's pregnant and they can't x-ray her. So the only thing they can do is believe her, and they let her go. She comes out the airport. The drug traffickers are waiting there. They're upset. What's the problem? Why did it take so long? What happened in there? So they get all three girls. They take them to the hotel. The girls change their clothes. The guys are sitting there watching TV. Lucy's still sick, and she's getting worse. Blanca, Maria. So now the process is that you have to wait until you have to go to the bathroom. And that's an interesting thing because on the plane, Maria had to use the bathroom. And, some balloons came out, and she had to take the balloons, clean them off, and then she had to re-swallow them on the plane because, I mean, you're on the plane, you can't leave them there, and you got the air stewardess, and it was just been a bad situation. So eventually, they have to do, wait for them to defecate, get the balloons out of their system, and then the drug traffickers, the relay guys, would pay them the money for coming and bringing it over, and then they could take their flights back home. That's the plan. That's the normal plan. But unfortunately, that's not the way it happens. Lucy dies. Maria and Blanca are asleep, but Maria awakes and she sees the two relay guys, the traffickers. They're taking Lucy into the bathroom, and this is the real part, the harsh part of that world. They're kind of cutting her up to dismember her and dispose of the evidence. And so Maria wakes Blanca up and says, we got to get out of here, because she sees what's happening. So Maria and Blanca, they run away from the drug traffickers. But they're in New York. They have no place to go. They don't know anyone. So it's a really bad situation. The only person that she knows is she remembers Lucy's sister's address, Carla. They're in front of Carla's address. Blanca and Maria have this huge argument. Blanca says, I don't want to go. I'm not going in there. Maria says, what are you going to do? I'm tired of watching you after anyway, so forth and so. And Blanca steams off. Maria goes in and she tries to knock and nobody's answering. So eventually, someone comes out, lets her in the building. She goes up and she waits. Carla's husband comes to the door and says, who are you? She goes, oh, I'm a friend of Lucy's. He tells Carla, hey, I'm a friend of Lucy's, and Lucy said to come here if I had any problems. She's like, oh, my little sister. And eventually she lets her in, they talk, and so forth and so on. So Maria's staying at Carla's. Next morning, guess who shows up? Blanca. And then it's like, well, how do you know each other? Well, we know each other, a story, and how do you know my sister? So forth and so on. So they don't know anybody. She says, oh, you're both in New York. You don't know anybody. And this is the great thing about the quote unquote Latino culture. And there's some truth to this, that, friendship, cousins, knowing somebody, it matters. And, it really does. And people will take you in on the basis of who you know or, who you're connected to and so forth and so on. So she takes them in. The next day they get up. She's going to help them trying to find a job. And that's how they meet Don Fernando. But before they could meet that job or meet Don Fernando, Carla calls home back to Colombia because her and Lucy really hadn't been talking for a long time. And I guess she's just calling, seeing how things are going, so forth. And Maria, obviously being in New York, doesn't know anything about New York, doesn't know how everything works, doesn't know who to connect, how to use the phone, how to get in touch. She feels her heart is warm for her family. And remember, she's still pregnant. So she calls home, talks to her mom, says, hey, how's things going? And interestingly, she asks about her little nephew and her sister, and everything's cool there. And then she goes to get a sonogram. I think that's what it's called for women. And, to hear the baby and to see the baby and so forth with the money that she does have. So then they go to Don Fernando's, her and Blanca, and in the middle of the meeting of Don Fernando, when he's like, hey, I'm going to try and help you out and so forth, Blanca takes the drugs out of the bag and she's got it in her thing because Blanca's an interesting girl. She's a little stubborn in this movie and she wants what she wants. She does it her way. It's amazing that they're both friends, and I think they're friends because they both have similar personalities, but Blanca does some things that are just like, why would you do that? And Don Fernando sees the drugs, the little balloons, and he's like, hey, what is that? And she's like, oh. He goes, I know what that is, man. Where'd you get that from? And then they explain him how they got it, how they got up. And he goes, oh, you got to take that back. You got to take that back. Do you understand what's going to happen to your family and everything in Colombia? You have to take that back. These people don't play. And so he's like, okay. So Maria and Blanca take them back to the drug dealers. The drug dealers are pissed. They see the girls. They're like, oh, how many are there? They got to count them, so forth and so on. They give them their money, which is $10,000 a piece, which is a lot of money in Colombia. And so Maria is feeling, the loss of Lucy, who became a friend, like that. And she's like, well, you have to give Lucy's money too. And he's like, what do you mean? It's none of your business. And she's like, no, but it's your responsibility. And she's like, Maria said, no, es su responsabilidad. So the drug dealers are messed up. Carlo is like, no, it's none of your business. Go away. And then the other drug dealer says, you know what? We're going to give it to you. And when you get back to Colombia, tell the big guy, how nice we really were to you. And next time on your next trip, don't cause all these problems for us. So they give the money back to her. But before that happened, Don Fernando had told Carla, Lucy's sister, what really happened to Lucy by phone call with Maria in the house. And then Carla got really upset, obviously, and kicked them both out. And so, Maria felt some type of way. And then there was a touching scene when she comes to the funeral home, and she sees Carla, and Carla actually forgives her, and Maria gives her the money to pay for Lucy's burial because it really bothered her, and she was touched and she was moved by it, and she understood how wanting to do something for your family or whatever, and wanting to get out of a bad situation, how everything, that's the irony of it. She really would have just wanted to do the right thing, but it ended up so wrong, so wrong. And that, that weighed on her. So she sees Carla, she gives her the money, and, you know, Carla tells her that, her and her sister hadn't been on such a great relationship. And it's just a shame the way everything came. So then after that, that it moves us to the sort of the closing part of the movie, and you see her and Blanca walking through the airport to go back home, and Blanca really wants to go home, but Maria, she turns around and she goes back into New York, and she doesn't get on the plane. And I thought that right there was really cool because, and this is the end of that part. So, I just look at that and say that, here's this independent girl in the middle of nowhere. She's pregnant, and I was trying to fix my screen. She's pregnant, and she decides that her best future is no longer in Colombia, but now her best future is right where she's at. And she's willing to risk all of that for her and obviously her baby. So I just look at that as being like, wow, what an interesting film. And I'm going to bring just myself back on the screen. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it from the beginning to the end. It's one of my favorite movies. Not my favorite movie. My favorite movie is Ten Commandments. But one of my favorite movies. And I just thought that the story in itself was really, really strong. The acting, again, was incredible. I love the scenery. And it was so true to life. I grew up in New York City. In New York. But I've also lived in New York City. And to know kind of how things can work in certain environments. I grew up in a very socioeconomically disadvantaged environment, and I was around a lot of things. So I got to see, the end result of a lot of things, unfortunately and fortunately. So, I thought it was a really, really great film. And I hope that the people that get a chance to watch it will enjoy it. And that's going to be pretty much all of my review here. And so we're going to get out of here. I hope, again, that you enjoy it. So, hey, watch Maria, Full of Grace, and enjoy it. And I keep saying that because I really hope that you do. And that's all I got.